What's up, basketball coaches, players, and fans? Welcome to the Pass First podcast, where we share our knowledge of the game. My name is Alex Engel, and I'm here with my partner, Augie Johnston. We hope you're able to take something away from this podcast that will help you in your basketball journey. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. So today we're going to talk about a few different things involving how to improve yourself on the basketball court. We're going to talk about how to put yourself in a good position to make the team, whether that be your high school team, maybe it's junior high, wherever you're starting at, and then how to earn more playing time. So once you've made that team, how to get on the court a little bit more. From there, we're going to talk about how to become the go-to player, how to become the guy that has the ball in his hands most of the time. And then from there, we're going to move on to how to make it to that next level. Okay, maybe it's college. Maybe you're a college athlete trying to make it professionally. So how to get to that next level. And then finally, what's the purpose of all this? Why put so much time into basketball? What is it going to get you in the long run? So let's go ahead and start it off. So Augie, I'm going to ask you, what do you think about what's the best way to put yourself in a good position to make a basketball team?
Yeah, so I think initially you think of tryouts. What do I need to do in tryouts? But I think I challenge players that they should look even beyond tryouts or before tryouts. I think there's opportunities for you to come into the coach's classroom and chat with them a little bit, let them know you're interested in trying out. And that's kind of like the first step I think that a lot of players miss is try to find some way to build some sort of relationship, I think, with the coach before tryouts even start. That way he knows who you are, he knows you're interested. But that would be kind of one tip that most people don't think about. I don't think right away that I would go with. After that, I think, you are in tryouts and there's a lot of different things you need to be doing in tryouts. I don't want to take up all the time talking about my opinion on tryouts, but obviously all the little things like, if coach blows the whistle, don't just jack a shot up from half court or do any of that kind of stuff. And hopefully you've had some coaching in your youth, and really in that youth coaching, hopefully those coaches are drilling that kind of stuff into you so that when you do get to tryouts, kind of the etiquette. So I guess I'm talking about like the tryout etiquette or practice etiquette. Make sure you kind of got that dialed in. What are your thoughts? What do you think? What are some ways to put yourself in a good position?
I definitely agree with those. I think also coming in and like being in good shape. I think that's something that people forget about a lot. Is if you're in good shape and you're running whatever your liners or whatever the drill is, and you're one of the top people out there. I'm not saying it's going to cover up maybe for all your basketball deficiencies, but it's going to make you look a little bit better than the guy that's last. And if it's between you and him, and you guys are about equal, probably going to give you the spot over him. So definitely that. I would say showing up early if you can and leaving late. I know it's kind of like an old adage, but if you're the first one in the gym and the last one to leave, like coaches notice that stuff, because they then shows them that you want to be there. And so they're going to, do what they can to try and keep you there if possible. So I definitely think those are two other things that you can do.
Yeah. And I think on another note, as far as being in tryouts, like don't try to do too much and show that you know how to play basketball. I mean, you could really go out there in tryouts and be like, all right, I need to score all these points. I need to do all this. So you're taking bad shots. That's going to look bad. Mm-hmm. So you're trying to, do too much. You're turning the ball over. That's going to look bad. When instead it's best to maybe, try to set up other teammates, set solid screens, like do those kind of things that coaches will take note of, because they're not looking to find who the best player in the gym is. Especially if you're like one of those borderline players, like you need to go out there and show that you know how to play basketball, that you can make the other players better, that you're going to be able to help out, make practices better and not worse. Because I know personally for me, I will look at a kid and be like, I don't know if I can keep him because he's going to just destroy practices. He doesn't know what a back screen is. And so every time we try to run the back screen play, he's going to mess it up. And so those kind of things, definitely if you're like a borderline player. Last thing I just wanted to add before throwing it back to you is that, this has happened to me, is that if there's stuff that you can do with the team or in workouts or weight room stuff that's before tryouts, that you better be doing that, because
Mm.
there's been kids that have made my team before in the past that, never made the team in middle school or maybe freshman year or whatever, but they showed up every single time to all of my preseason stuff and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, they're on the team. Like, they were way ahead of all these other kids too that maybe have been more talented. But when those tryouts started and I said, all right, whatever, 5-man weave, they knew it because they did it before. And like, that kind of stuff I think goes a long way too.
Yeah, I think kind of touching back on your point about coaches not necessarily looking for the best player, I want to make sure that like people understand. I think it's because I mean, I could be wrong, but for both of us, I'm pretty sure we already know usually who the best players are. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a surprise. It's not like, oh, this is just a random group of kids. Like, let me see who's pretty good. Like, usually you know who they are. You've heard about them before, or you've seen them play before, and it's very easy to tell who that is. It's that next group, or maybe the group after that, where they're trying to fight for position. And those are the kids that, I don't know, is John better than Steve? It's hard to tell. I got to watch, I got to watch for a week or so. Those are the things, and it's all about the little things. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at here with all our stuff, is it's all the little things. Obviously more talented kids and kids that do better are probably going to have a better chance. That I think that's just basic common sense. But if they're not willing to do those little things, or if, like you said, they don't show that they're going to fit well with the team, you can't always control if this kid's better than one kid's better than the other, but you can control all those little things. You can control showing up on time. You can control going to everything. You know what I mean? You can control playing hard and listening and all that. So I think it's just about controlling all those things that you can, and then just hopefully, letting the chips fall where they do. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's so many different things that you can do to just kind of separate yourself. And I think that's kind of the key. If you're a borderline player, how do you separate yourself and show that you're going to add value to the team? And there's a lot of ways you can do that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, so now going from, talking about how to make the team, let's say you made the team, right? You're finally there, you're on the team, you're feeling good. But now quickly, you're going into preseason, and okay, preseason's kind of easy for everyone because there's no real playing time, right? You're just practicing or scrimmaging against each other. But now you get into games. Okay. And now that excitement and fun that you had of making the team maybe is wearing away because you're the 13th guy on the bench, and you're practicing every day and you're working on it every day, but you're not getting playing time. So, how do you get more playing time? What do you do when you find yourself in that position?
yeah, we're going to both agree on this, and we're going to talk about this a lot, but the main thing for me is find your role and do your role well. And it takes a lot of different skill sets to make a good basketball team. So if you're able to find a role that is going to directly impact your team winning, which is maybe being the best defender, that's going to get you playing time. Or maybe it's the best rebounder, that's going to get you playing time. And especially something like rebounding, like that is so valuable. I mean, you can look at the stats on most games and say, hey, who won the rebounding battle? And like 90% of the time, that's the team that won the game. So, I mean, if you're able to say, hey, I'm the best rebounder on the team, and I get us extra points from offensive rebounding, I get us fast break points from defensive rebounding, and that's really all you do, then I think that's a good way to get more playing time. Obviously, too, I think competing every single day in practice, that'll get you more playing time because, as a coach, you're always struggling to have good practices, right? You like, oh, we had a good one today. And then the next day, oh, we had a terrible one. It's like, how do we just have these intense, all out practices every single practice? And it's the guys that, that bring it every single day, allow the coach to have that. And then you stand out, doing that, you stand out. And then when the coach's turn to look down the bench, he knows that you've been bringing it all week, and, has no problem to put you in. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think something else, and that a lot of people do, it's actually the opposite of what you should do. But when someone's not playing, I think their first instinct is, oh, I'm not playing much, so I'm not going to put as much effort in. Like, I'm not going to put any extra time in. Like, I'm not playing, whatever. Like, not necessarily that they're going to be cancerous to the team, although that does happen too, right? But let's just like, whatever. I'll just show up to practice, like do the bare minimum, and that's it. And they kind of go like, I'm not, they blame the coach, or they blame this, or they blame that, or they just kind of stop caring. And in reality, if you're not playing, it's actually the opposite. Like you have to do more, like a lot more, because that's
Mm.
why you're not playing. You're not doing something good enough, you know what I mean, or something well enough that you should earn that playing time. So, if you're not playing, then you got to go to practice, you got to go to weights or whatever it is, and then you should be going on your own and working more, or asking coach if you can stay after practice, if he can, keep the gym open for you, something, because if you do the same thing you're doing, you're going to continue to get the same results. Um, and it's
Yeah.
counterintuitive because, most people, when they're not playing, confidence drops, they're not feeling great about themselves, or maybe it's not as great about the team. And so they stop working as hard, and then they go down this rabbit hole where it just gets worse and worse and worse. When in reality, you got to do the opposite, and you got to work twice as hard to get back into where you want to be. So
Yeah, I think that's really the real answer here. I think out of all the things that we said is you want more playing time? Okay, work hard on your own and get better.
mhm.
Therefore, when you go on the court, you produce. Like coaches want to win, so I think no matter what, as long as you are producing when you're on the court, then you're going to get that playing time and you're going to keep it. So,
Yeah,
yeah, like you want more playing time? Okay, get better. Be a
right.
better player than you are now. You'll get more playing time.
And I think it goes to like, how bad do you want it? Because I hear that, I've heard that before, where kids are like, oh, I wanted more playing time. Not even necessarily to me, just maybe someone I knew, or they were talking, with for another coach. Yeah, he didn't play me a whole lot. I'm like, okay, well, how have you been working on your own? Well, not really. I'm like, well, then how do you expect to get more playing time? Like that doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, is it harder? Sure. Like, yeah, you've got practice, you got school, but how bad do you want it? Are you willing to give up 2-3 hours of your, social time or video game time or whatever time it is to get better? If not, then honestly, it's probably not that important to you. You know what I mean? Like, it's important, but not that important. If it's like, oh my God, this is all I want to do, I live or die by this, like, you'll find time. You'll find an
Hmm.
outside court. You'll find your backyard to dribble in. You'll find something. Because realistically, all you need is a basketball. You can at least improve on something, even if you don't have a hoop. So
Yeah.
um, I definitely think that it's just that mentality, and it's hard, especially for younger players, I think, to realize that. You know.
Yeah, just as one little final note on this, as far as working hard and getting better and stuff, I think nowadays it's probably a lot different. But I know for me growing up, I didn't even know that you had to work on your game. Like I didn't even know that you had to practice. Like I didn't know you had to get up shots. I didn't know you had to do ball handling until probably like seventh grade, which is it's not super old or young, but the case is I think nowadays kids know they start working on their ball handling in like third grade and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, just as a little side note, like first of all, you got to understand that hey, you can get better by working on your game. That you should do that. So yeah,
All right, so we talked about how to earn a little more playing time. So let's say now you're on the court, you're a starter, but you're not necessarily the go-to guy. Maybe you're one of the first guys subbed out, or even if you're playing a lot, you're not touching the ball to shoot or dribble or do whatever. How do you become that go-to player on your team?
yeah, I think that's a tough one, right? And really the main answer that I come up with, and I think about this all the time, and I tell my players even, is capitalize on your opportunity. Because obviously at this point now you're getting playing time, you're getting an opportunity, but you got to capitalize on it. And how do you capitalize on it? You got to produce. So let's say, and that doesn't mean, go and jack up a bunch of shots, but let's say you are a 3 shot a game guy. Go 2 for 3. Okay, go 2 for 3. That's going to help you eventually become the 5 shot guy. Then go 3 for 5, be a 3 for 5 guy. And then you're going to become, the 10 shot guy. Now at that point, it's hard to keep that same kind of percentage and be like, okay, go 7 for 10. But, then at that point you've earned, at least 10 shots a game. So now you have the ball in your hand more. And, and then you can continue to try to capitalize on those opportunities. I'll tell you a short little story that happened to me. And that was in college when I was coming off the bench, and there's 1 or 2 players, like all players, that I felt like I should have been playing over. Obviously, everyone feels like that, but I was coming off the bench trying to play my role, and there was one game where a player fouled out who played ahead of me, and so like that was my opportunity. And luckily for me, I was able to capitalize on that opportunity. I remember I scored 15 points a game. It's not like I scored like 30 points or anything, but I scored 15, and I had one of those games. It was like a 5 for 8 game or something like that. And, and then I got another opportunity the next game. And this time, wow, I played, the guy didn't foul out ahead of me, but I took some of his playing time. I, played like 20 minutes or 25 minutes that game, and it was the same story. I scored like 15 points. I was like a 5-for-8 guy. And the game after that, I actually started. So, I mean, just capitalize on your opportunity and eventually you'll have the ball in your hands. And that's kind of my 2 cents on that one.
I actually, it's funny that you said that. I had kind of a similar story where my senior year, or at the beginning of the year, I was kind of sometimes I'd start, sometimes I'd come off the bench, and one of the games I actually came off the bench, and I just for whatever reason I was just like, all right, I'm gonna play extra aggressive, under control but extra aggressive, and I ended up going like to the free throw line 10 times, and I went 10 for
Hmm.
10 from the free throw line. I only actually scored one bucket, 2 points of an actual basket, but I had 12 points. And the next day we had practice, and my coach came up to me after practice and said, hey, just so you know, you're starting tomorrow in our next game. I started the next game, and I just kind of kept doing that. I didn't always score exactly that amount, but started scoring 8, 7, 12, 15 points. And from there on, never looked back, started the rest of the season. So like you said, it's just about that opportunity. And I'd probably had a couple of those opportunities earlier in the year, but I didn't quite take them. I was
Hmm.
a little nervous about, I don't want to mess up, so coach doesn't take me out, or whatever. It might not have been exactly that, but something along those lines. So I agree with that. You got to capitalize. But I think part of that also, and we're going to go back to this point over and over, is like you have to also have the skills and abilities to separate yourself, to be the go-to guy. It's one
Hmm.
thing to just say, oh, well, capitalize on your abilities. Well, if you never practice, you're not going to capitalize. You've got to put that work in first and foremost. Because at the end of the day, you've got to be able to show on the court and earn it, rather than just being like, well, I deserve it. Why do you deserve it? Have you put the work in? Have you gotten 200 shots up a day? If not, you're probably not going to be the guy getting those extra shots. It's going to go to the guy that's taking 2, 3, 400 shots every day. So I think that's another thing is, everybody wants to be the go-to guy, but who's willing to actually sacrifice for it?
And yeah, it's kind of the last thing I would kind of add to that. If you really want to be the go-to player on your team, is you got to do more than just work hard and capitalize on opportunities. You have to get the buy-in from not only your coach but your teammates. I think if your teammates understand that, hey, you're going to give them the best opportunity to win the game by taking that last shot or by taking the most shots, or just not even about shooting, right? Because you can be the go-to player in your team with being the best, assist guy or whatever, but just really having the ball in your hands, right? That's what the players want. They
Mm-hmm.
want the ball in their hands, but it's all about buy-in, right? If your teammates buy into that idea of you being the Kobe Bryant, then you basically are the go-to player. And it
Mm-hmm.
starts with, I think, the players. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the topic.
Yeah. Okay. So now moving along from there. So, we've went through putting yourself in position to make the team. Okay. You earned your playing time. Now you're the go-to player. Okay. Even at that level, right? Every team's got their one or two guys that are their go-to guys. So take it to the next step. How do you make it to that next level? How do you separate yourself further? Because that next level, everybody was a go-to player. Everybody was all league or all conference or all state or whatever. So how do you make it to that next level?
Yeah, as far as making it to the next level, I think there's a lot of different things that go into it. But I think definitely something that you mentioned in the last episode, and I think that's something that holds true, is you got to win. Okay, you got to win games, and coaches are looking for teams that know how to win and players that know how to win. So I think that's the main thing you should focus on, is just winning on whatever team you're on. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think winning, I mean, I think there's a whole package to it. So, right, like we said, there's even though being the go-to player kind of puts you in a quote unquote elite class, every team's got their go-to player. So now you got to separate yourself further from those guys. So, for most players, not all, but most players, the skill sets and the abilities are going to be somewhat similar, of those go-to guys. Obviously, yeah, maybe a lower level team is not as good as a higher level team, but let's just kind of speak generally. So what are you going to do that's going to separate yourself? Well, first thing I think about is, are you taking care? I know people are going to be like, oh, we hear this all the time. Are you taking care of your grades, right? It doesn't matter if you're the best player in the world. If you got a 1.5, you're not going anywhere, So are you taking care of your grades? If you're a 4.0 guy and you're, a go-to player and you're winning, you're more attractive to a college than a guy that's like a 2.2, because they know that you're probably going to take care of business. And the guy that's a 2.2, he might fail out and be ineligible in college, and depending on where you're at, the schools can actually lose scholarships because their players fail. So that's one. Two, attitude. Coaches, when they're watching you guys, how are you acting on the bench? How are you acting on the team? What does your own coach say about you? Because they call. I mean, if you guys
Yeah.
don't know that, coaches call coaches, and they're going to give an honest opinion about it, because most of the time, because if I'm trying to, let's say like when I was coaching at Cuesta, if a 4-year school called for one of my players and I was like, oh yeah, he's great, personality, great attitude, great person, and he really was the opposite, then I send him to that school and he acts out at that school, guess who they're never going to recruit from again? Cuesta, right? So there's a level of honesty that I think coaches try and keep with each other. So I think that as well, grades, being, just an upstanding person, and having a good attitude are two other ways that you can kind of separate yourselves. I mean, obviously we can talk for days about the different skills you need. But at the end of the day, most college players have somewhat similar abilities to produce.
Yeah, you got to be good enough, right? That's the first thing. We
Right.
talk about, all these other things, but number one, how do you get to the next level? Be good enough, because it's college
Yeah.
coaches' job, right? It's their job to
Mhm.
find you, so they will find you if you're good enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with all that, definitely.
I think too, a lot of people don't understand just because you were good in high school, it doesn't mean you're good enough to play in college. I think if there's one thing people can take away from this is, I mean, how many times have we either played at an open gym or just watched a game or coached a game or something, and you see the kid who just thinks he's all that, and he's a good high school player for wherever he's at, but in the grand scheme of things, like not good enough to go play in college. Maybe he plays at a small school or a school that's not that good, and he's the only guy that can score. Um, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying this is always the case, but I've seen that quite a lot where guys are like, oh, I'm killing at some random open gym, or I'm killing at some tiny high school. Like I can go play in college. And it's like, well, you're good for the little fishbowl you're in there, but in the big, in the big swimming pool or the big pond, are you still that good?
Hmm.
People got to remember that as well. So,
Yeah, and you know it better than anybody, but you'll see a kid in high school, and he's like, yeah, I'm trying to, really good player. I'm trying to go D1. I want to go D1 or whatever it is.
hmm
Like, well, go to Cuesta or go to a junior college and go play open gym with those guys. If you're
hmm
D1, you'll go in there and you'll probably dominate them. If you really are
right.
a D1, or maybe not even dominate, but you'll do good, right?
hmm
You'll be able to play well with them. But if you go in there as a 17-year-old kid and playing against these freshmen and sophomores at a JC, like you're not going to, it's very rare that you're going to go in there and just dominate the competition even at a junior college level.
All
So
right. So, now that we've talked about all the different levels, how to move on from each one, what is the kind of purpose to all of this, right? What's your end goal? What's the purpose? You're putting all these hours into basketball, whether you're a high school player, college, or beyond. Why? Why do all this?
yeah, it's kind of a good question. I think everyone has their own answer. For me personally, it comes down to one thing. The main thing, and there comes down to a lot of things, but the main thing for me is relationships. You're going to build a lot of relationships. I tell people all the time, when I got married, in my wedding, my groomsmen were two of my high school teammates and two of my college teammates. And they're people that I talk to every single day. And, it's like me and you, like we built a relationship through basketball.
hmm
And to me, that's the main thing, is the brotherhood you get. And it goes far too. Even if you're not playing on a high school team or a college team and you're just playing an open gym, right? There's still a brotherhood that you kind of form with those guys that you meet up with every Saturday to play ball with. And you never know, maybe someday you're down and out, you don't have a job, you go to your Saturday open run, you tell your guys, hey, I got fired. You don't know, someone might look out for you there and get you a job and help you in something that's like deeper than just, basketball. So
Yeah.
that to me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think as I've gotten older, I've started to see that a lot more. Um, I think also, I mean, for me, like the competitiveness of the sport, like obviously, like you said, everyone's different. I'm a very competitive person, so for me, it gives me an outlet for that. So I love it because I can get on the court and just kind of be as competitive as possible and not have to worry about, am I going to hurt someone's feelings or, get in a bad position or whatever. So I like it for that. Obviously you have to have a love for the game. I think if you're going to put all that time in, you got to have a basic love for the game in general. You got to enjoy doing it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, the relationship is very important. Same as with you as with me. Most of my close friends, are from basketball in some fashion. Um, and then on top of that, I think it gives you opportunities educationally, right? I mean, if you're going to go play in college, you're getting a scholarship and you're saving $100,000 over 4 years. That's huge. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you can definitely get out of it. So it gives you not only free education, but just a chance in general to get an education, which not everybody gets that opportunity, So that I think also, potential job opportunities as you get older. Let's say you want to coach. If or you want to be a trainer or whatever, the higher level you go, the more credibility you're going to have. I mean, it's just the basics of the game. If you go play pro, you're going to have a lot of opportunities when you come back home, or maybe not, I don't want to say a lot, but you're going to have more opportunities than somebody who maybe stopped playing as a JV basketball player.
Yeah.
So I think that depending on what level you get to, you're giving yourself more opportunities. I can tell you for myself, my coaching career started because I had a former college coach of mine that wanted me to coach. It wasn't like I just randomly showed up one day and he's like, oh yeah, you might be able to help us out, right? Like he knew me, and it was from a relationship we had built, from coach and player, and that helped me get into where I was at. So I definitely think there's a lot of things you can get out of playing basketball, and it's probably true to a lot of sports, to be honest.
Yeah, and we're kind of talking more so right now about, chasing the college dream or whatever. But I mean, the stuff you get out of it at a young age too, like when you're a youth basketball player, is probably even bigger as far as, learning to deal with that failure, right? Mm-hmm. Basketball will humble you, and you got to eat some humble pie sometimes when you play basketball. And I think that helps you in life, just dealing with adversity and that kind of stuff. And and I mean, working as a team, teamwork, all that kind of the generic stuff that you think about when you're like, why do we even do sports? Oh, so to, learn how to have good teamwork. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's true. It's true to a certain extent. You do, socially, right? For young kids, socially, put them in a much different situation with a group of people than, any really other dynamic you can get into. Sports are just crazy like that because it's emotional, it's competitive, right? It's fun. And you can get a lot out of it.
I think it also makes you more resilient. And that's something I left off earlier, is you can deal with things. I think if you go through and you play sports, you're able to deal with, whatever traumas or problems in your life easier than someone who hasn't, or at least hasn't maybe faced that same adversity, because you've faced some sort of adversity, and obviously there are other ways you can get it other than sports, but I think sports is a great way to do that. So, but any final thoughts on that?
No, that's about it.
All right. Well, as always, thank you guys. If you're watching at home, thank you guys for joining us and following along. We really enjoy doing this. So we will see you guys in the next video. Peace.